We have a lot of customers that call us and tell us that they would rather get it delivered than walk 5 minutes away and wait in line at the dispensary and do that. They like the comfort of just staying at their house and getting it delivered.
Welcome to the Dispensary Marketing Podcast, where we interview the top dispensary owners and experts in this space so that you can stay up to date with the latest trends and strategies that you'd otherwise miss out on. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Seth, thanks for hopping on the Dispensary Marketing Podcast.
Absolutely, Brendan. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate the invite.
Awesome. So for the audience, please tell them who you are, the name of your store, and where you're located.
My name is Seth Gillen. I'm the founder and owner of NorCal Holistics Inc. and also Just-in-Time Distribution. We're located in Sacramento, California.
Awesome. So what are your keys to running a successful dispensary?
To be honest, I think the main thing for me is to put the business first. You know, that's from the get-go kind of been my mentality, is that the business needs to survive. So that's always been the most important thing, above paying myself, above spending money on extra things that I would like to spend money on to maybe make the brand more well-known and just get out there more. But it's really, for me, just been about focusing on the business, number one, and then focusing on finding and maintaining good people. Having a great team is super, super important, having trustworthy people. And I'm really, really blessed to have an amazing team of people that I've hired and trained and worked with, and just really gotten to know, and we've become a family here. So that's a really, really big part of it, is the people that you're surrounded with.
Right. So on the putting the business first, right? I think a lot of times, like as business owners, you need to put the business first, but then you also have your personal life, and then you have friends, then you have family, right? So what's your perspective on the whole work-life balance? Would you say you have a good work-life balance? Do you believe it exists? Do you think business is part of life? Like, where do you fall in that range?
I think I lean a little bit more towards the business is life.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in my life, at my age, I feel like it's grind time. And so I'm putting almost all of my energy into my businesses and just into growing them and just making them the best that they can possibly be every day. So yes, I think a work-life balance is definitely necessary, especially to stay sane and be able to come back and do a good job. So I'm a big believer in taking vacations. But ultimately, if the business needs something, if it needs me to be here for 16 hours a day or 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, then I will do that for as long as I need to, until I feel like everything is good and running smoothly.
And then on the people side, you also mentioned that you need to build a good team, right? Like, would you say, are the key pillars to having a good team around you?
Honestly, it's personality. It's the vibe of the person, right? Because we spend a lot of time together. We work in really close quarters. And ultimately, people have to see my vision for the company and understand it and want to follow that vision. So it's really important to have a clear vision and to communicate that. And then to find people that are willing and capable to add to that. They want to be part of it, but they also want to help make it better, and they make suggestions. So it's an ever-evolving thing that constantly gets better. So trustworthiness is also a really big one in this industry, because there's a lot of cash, there's a lot of things that you're dealing with, and you have to put trust into people. So it's a tricky thing, but I think we've gotten really lucky, honestly, with a lot of the team members that I have. I mean, I have employees that have been with me since the beginning, 6-7 years. And I think it's just really important to build relationships with them, get to know them, and understand how you can work their journey into your journey, and you can both be successful.
Right. So aligning incentives and making sure that they're a good fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. And then now, I see you mentioned it right now. So how did the dispensary actually get started? What was your life before? And, what was, maybe a couple months, couple years? I don't know how long you were thinking about starting it. What was that journey like?
Yeah, it kind of fell into my lap, to be honest with you. I didn't plan to get into the cannabis industry. Before this, I was living in Southern California, working in restaurants. I was a general manager at Chipotle for a while and a couple other casual restaurants. I enjoyed that. It was fast paced and got to meet a lot of people. And I had an opportunity to move back up here, live with a family member, and just kind of focus on school and figuring out if I wanted to do something else in my life. And I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was kind of dabbling with online Amazon and eBay businesses like 10 or 12 years ago, and was having a little bit of success with that, but not much. And so the cannabis industry fell into my lap. I was going to the community college here in Sacramento. And in my advertising class, there was a gentleman who was doing his advertising presentations on his cannabis delivery service. And so we kind of got to talking, and he explained to me the mutual benefit, not for profit, way that you had to establish the company to be in compliance with the Prop 215 regulations, more or less. I mean, there wasn't really a ton of regulation, but it was the way to do it. So I essentially copy pasted that formula and started a delivery service in 2016, and just a little bit before legalization. And then have just focused on building it from there, just piece by piece. It started as a one-man operation, and obviously it was still Prop 215. We were a little bit in the gray area, and we had our state license, but we did not have city license yet. And that was the tricky thing, was we needed to have our space and be in our building and have it all built out, get certificate of occupancy. But the city knew that we were still operating, and they kind of just turned a blind eye to that. However, the state did find out that we were operating in a different location than we were supposed to. This was in February. It was actually on Valentine's Day massacre, as we like to call it here, where the DCC came into our black location and gutted our facility. They took everything. They took all of our inventory, all of our cash, everything. And they basically said, you can't operate here. You have a license, but you can't do it here. They took everything. And so that was a big turning point for me, because we had grown. It's really at the peak of our growth in 2020. This is right before COVID. And they gutted the company. I mean, I had nothing left. So I had to essentially start over. I had about $10,000 that I had saved up, and I put that back into inventory. I had to fire half of my employees, and then just kept a core team of like 5 people. And we essentially started from scratch again and rebuilt everything that we had just from that small amount of inventory, and just had to multiply that. That was such a big turning point, because there was a period of a few days or a week where I was done. I wasn't going to be able to do it anymore, and it was so heartbreaking. And I think that going through that and succeeding through that and finding a way to make it work was, I feel, one of my biggest accomplishments.
Let's start at the beginning, right? Like literally at the inception, when it was just you, right? What was your day-to-day looking like then?
My day-to-day was wake up and wait for that phone to ring. It was, how many phone calls can I get, and how quickly can I go do these deliveries? So yeah, I would answer the phones, pack the orders, and go and deliver the orders. And it started out, funny enough, I was working a little part-time job at Pete's Coffee. And during my lunch break, I would go and take a couple of deliveries, because there was only a couple of deliveries that I had throughout the day, and I would essentially time them there. So I would leave on my lunch break, go and deliver 2 or 3 orders, and come back, get off my shift, and then the evening came along, and I would go and deliver more. But for the first couple weeks or couple of months, it was a lot of juggling that and still going to school, and it was just kind of like, well, I'm going to try this and see if it works. I don't really know if it's going to turn into anything, but I'm just going to give it my best shot and see what happens.
Right. So was it just a website that you had? So what was the customer acquisition strategy at that time?
It was weedmaps, bro. It was weedmaps.
The Wild West of early weedmaps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Back then it was a little bit different the way they had it set up in this region. There was only 2 regions, and there was like one company, one guy that was just dominating it. He had the gold listings. His name was everywhere. Everyone, basically went to that delivery service. So I set my sights on that, and I said, wow, that's where I want to be. And Weedmaps telling me how much roughly, they couldn't share exactly, but they said roughly how much that person was spending a month on their advertising. And I was like, there's no way I would ever do that. There's no reason to do that. Why would they do that? And slowly but surely, I realized that the more money I spent on Weedmaps, the more phone calls I would get. And that's just the way it worked. I mean, it's the number one platform where cannabis users go to find cannabis.
Right.
And so it works, and I have to be honest that is really what got us from 0 to 60.
Right. Was your first hire a driver? Like, what was the first hire that helped you kind of alleviate some of the fulfillment, I guess, that you needed to do?
Yep, it was definitely a driver. Hired a driver. They would come to my house in the morning and they'd, pick up whatever orders I had. I think I did it myself until I was doing about 15 or 20 deliveries a day. And then it started to be too much to take the phone calls, do the deliveries, source product, get product, package product, because back then we were all, like what California calls a micro business, which is where you purchase your own product, package your own product, distribute your own product. And so that was how I spent my days, was sourcing product, packaging it, and then delivering it. So yeah, first employee was a driver. They would come and do deliveries, and it kind of progressed to, okay, now here's a kit. We started doing ice cream truck model. Here's your kit for the day.
Right.
And that was the first time that I was able to take a day off, was when I started doing the kit. Because other than that, it was 7 days a week. I had to either answer the phone call or be on backup to go do deliveries.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was the biggest weight off, was hiring that person. I think they lasted for a few months, hired somebody else, and then that person kind of phased out, and ended up just kind of slowly acquiring different drivers until we had 3-4 that were all on ice cream kits, and we're driving around, and we were starting to pick up some traction, and then it was just kind of put the pedal on the metal from there. Like I said, it was started, the way you had to do the company in the beginning was a mutual benefit, not-for-profit corporation. Mm-hmm. So doing that, I really took that in stride, and I said, okay, well, the way this is supposed to be run is that all of the profits go back into the company to support the patients and give them better product and more product. So I did that. I had a little bit of a nest egg. I had a little part-time job, so I didn't really need to take anything from the cash flow for a long time. I really didn't touch the cash flow for a long, long time until I felt 100% confident that the ship was going to keep going, that there was enough wind in the sails for it to keep going if I carved a little chunk off. So that was kind of the next turning point, was, okay, now I think I can support myself with this. I can leave my part-time job, and I can really go full steam into this. And that was so exciting. It was so motivating, always wanting to be an entrepreneur, and then finding something that worked. It was just a formula, and it was working. It was pay for advertising, get phone calls, deliver it. Pay for more advertising, get more phone calls, deliver it. It was just rinse and repeat for a long, long time.
Did you have to deal with, kind of drivers, taking products, stealing things, like you say, it's a business based off on trust, on cash collection. Did you have any, big issues with that at the beginning or even now?
No, I really didn't. I think it's because I was very selective about who I brought on. The first driver was somebody that I didn't know. I'd hired them. I forget, honestly. I think I probably found them online somewhere. My second driver, though, was a friend that I had known from middle school. So there was a long history there. And that worked out really well because there was trust already.
Right.
And I think that was, crucial at that period, because it was difficult to trust anybody. I'd say probably once I got my third or fourth driver, there was some issues. I was getting a little burned out, so I was starting to lean a little bit more on them carrying the inventory, and then sometimes they'd bring the inventory home at night because it would be too much to go and get it and bring it back the next day. So I would kind of extend a little bit of trust there. And there was one driver that ultimately inventory was missing that shouldn't have been there, and there was a conversation, and that was the end of our relationship.
Right. And then as for like actual business investment, aside from salary and buying product, did you have to like buy vehicles for them? Like, what did that process look like? You bought them transportation? Did they use their own?
So in the beginning, it was all their own transportation. I did mileage reimbursements to take care of that, paid for all their gas and everything. Not until we were in our licensed facility and had a pretty good sized team of, I'd say, 10 or 12 drivers did we start looking into getting company vehicles. And the reason I did that was it was a lot easier to insure and a lot safer to have them in company vehicles, less liability. And a lot of the drivers that I had at that time didn't really have a super reliable transportation, or if they did, it was an older car. Didn't make sense for them to do deliveries in it. So at one point we started buying Toyota Yaris's. There's an auto parts store around here in Sacramento, and they do deliveries, and I kept noticing, man, all of their delivery cars are Yaris's. So there must be a reason. It's an auto parts store. They probably know what a good car is that's cheap to repair and is going to run a long time. So I bought some Yaris's. And we still have Yaris's now. It's kind of been our staple vehicle. We've gone through probably 10 or 12 of them. But still, at this point, company cars is definitely a more cost-effective and safe way to go.
Right. So now you have to deal with a bunch of like fleet management companies now, because it's not as just one person. You're going in, hey, John, take a look at my car, do this, right? Now it's the world of fleet management and these other big vehicles and stuff like that, right? Is that something that you'd imagined starting by yourself, driving by yourself, and now you have a bunch of cars on the road?
It's funny. I don't know if I pictured that or not, but I do remember a conversation with one of my drivers in the very beginning, and he said, one day you're going to have a building somewhere and you're going to have all these little cars going in and out of it every day. And I just remember thinking, maybe we'll get there. But that's exactly what happened. Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. How'd you deal with COVID? Was business better or worse because you were delivery?
COVID was a blessing in disguise for deliveries. Yeah. As terrible as that whole year or 2 years was for a variety of reasons, socially and economically, for the cannabis industry and here in California, it was really good. It was really positive. Everybody was at home. Everybody was ordering delivery. We were deemed an essential business, and sales just skyrocketed because everybody was at home. And they were getting, government check money from the U.S. government, and it really, really helped the industry. I think a lot of people can say the same thing. COVID numbers is kind of a joke. Oh, it's not like COVID numbers now. But I think we were really fortunate that we capitalized on that, and we really invested in growth during that period and expanding and acquiring and maintaining, keeping customers, which I think is really, really the name of the game in this delivery side of the business. You got to keep customers. There's a lot of new customers that come, but if you don't keep and retain as many as you can, you're not going to see a lot of growth. I think that's something that one way or another we have figured out how to keep customers. And since COVID, we've had continual growth, and we haven't ever had a year over year that was not at least some growth.
Right. So, you don't have to say any secrets, but what would you say are like kind of the main things that you cover in order to make sure you can continually retain your customers?
I don't know if there's a secret. It's a secret sauce, if anything. I think the main thing that we focus on is providing the best possible experience for our customers. It doesn't necessarily just mean the product. We definitely have good product, and we want to make sure that our product quality is top tier. But the main thing is customer service. We have a lot of really good drivers, really good personality. We have really good bud tenders that build relationships over the phone, and make customers want to come back. And I think, however that secret sauce was mixed and developed, it's working. And I couldn't really tell you exactly what it is. It's just I have been so lucky to be surrounded by a really, really good team of people that really care about the vision of the company, and they've made it what it is today. I mean, there's just I can't take credit for it, to be honest. It's it's something that I kind of started, but I think the mentality and the vibe of the folks that we have here at NorCal is something a little bit different, a little bit special, and that's just what sets us apart.
I mean, I say this to my clients all the time. It's like, it's not again, as you say, like a one special secret where you flick this switch and all of a sudden your customer retention is at, 100%, right? It's just very much doing the basic fundamental things, but at a world-class level, right? Like, are you going in with this smell?
Yep.
Are your products being delivered on time? Are your products good quality? Is your pricing reasonable compared to the rest of the market, right? Like, are you offering good deals and like, it's just a lot of things being done that leads to an overall good customer experience. And I think you have that absolutely right.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. It's just a mix of those things.
Right. So on, young Seth, couple of years ago, was fulfilling orders, figuring out vendors, doing all these different things and stuff like that. What is current Seth doing? Like, what is your day-to-day now that you have a team, now that you have drivers, now that you have, maybe a research team figuring out what the market's doing? What does, your day-to-day look like now compared to what it was before?
My day-to-day is a lot of office work. It's a lot of, I'm a numbers guy. I love crunching numbers. I love pulling reports and comparing things. So I spend a lot of time trying to understand why the numbers are what the numbers are. So why revenue numbers are the way that they are and how I can increase that. Why cost of good numbers are what they are and how I can decrease that. It's really just spending a lot of time figuring out how I can just tweak this and make it a little bit better. So it's a lot of people management. It's a lot of meeting and talking with folks, whether that's vendors, other companies, legal things, groups that I can get involved with. My main goal is to just have a smooth operating company, right? That people want to come back to. So a lot of my time is spent just focusing on people development, hiring, developing, training. We promote all of our managers from within the company. So everybody who's a manager with this company started as a tender, and that takes a lot of development and a lot of team building and things like that. So I would say I spend most of my time crunching numbers and just working directly with my managers to just grow the company.
Now, obviously, from a financial standpoint, you're doing much better than you were a long time ago. But do you sometimes miss the simplicity of the early days of business? Spend money on weedmaps, get more customers, fulfill the drivers, and then kind of get that done. You don't have to worry about promoting. Promoting is one thing, but then firing is another part of the problem too. Not a problem, but just an obstacle, in the whole developmental process, right? Training people that might not want to be trained, replacing people that you actually don't want to replace, right? Do you kind of miss the old days of business, or would you like the hustle and bustle of what's going on now?
I'd say I do miss it. Yeah, it was simpler. It was a little bit more wild west. It was more, I felt more entrepreneurial, and it was exciting. It was new. I didn't know where it was going to go. It's still really exciting. I still don't know where it's going to go, but it has definitely flattened out where it's a little more predictable, where I know what my day-to-day is going to look like. I know that we're still going to be here tomorrow. So that kind of fear of, is it going to work? Are we still going to be here? Are we going to make it? That's subsided. It's definitely not a guarantee. This industry is very tough and things can change very quickly day to day.
So would you say, to maybe some of the younger entrepreneurs out there, maybe not even in the cannabis industry, but those kind of like carving their own path and making their own business, that while there's a lot of uncertainty, while things are hard, and while that there's nothing guaranteed, well, especially in the early days, you're still going to look back and, be like, hey, I'm very glad I put this work in.
Absolutely. Put everything into it. Put everything you possibly can into it in the beginning, because I feel like it's kind of an exponential thing. The more effort you put in the beginning, the more it's going to multiply towards the end, or down the road.
Right. Agreed. But before we get into that, I've realized that after all of these interviews, dispensary owners need a safe space where they can ask the questions that Google doesn't have the answers for. So what I've done is I've created the world's first dispensary owners mastermind group, where it's an environment of like-minded individuals who can help make each other's lives easier and also make more money in the process. So if that's something that you're interested in, please check out the links in the description below. Now on to the rest of the show. So back in the day, you said weedmaps was your main thing. Like you said, put in $1, get $10 out. It might not be that way anymore. We had the recent weedmaps increase where they, 3-7x the pricing of ads and stuff like that. Are you still depending heavily on weedmaps for your advertising? Are you using any other platforms, any other strategies?
Yeah, I'd say weedmaps is probably about 50% of it now. We still rely on it pretty heavily. It's consistent. It works. With online ordering through their platform, a lot of customers are comfortable with that. So it's easy for them. But we've done a pretty good job trying to pull as many customers to our website and have them ordering directly through our website. We also have an app now that we got last year. You can download our app, order directly through our app. Other than weedmaps, SEO is definitely probably the number 2. SEO is very, very important. I didn't know that until a couple of years ago, and I wish it is something that I had jumped on a little bit sooner. So SEO, and then doing events local in the community, I think is a big thing because we're a localized company. It's not statewide. It's not nationwide where we can ship to other states. So building and establishing our presence here in Sacramento is really, really important. And I think cannabis is a big community. It's a big community of people, right? And it's definitely something that benefits when you get involved in that community and you show up at events and donate to things and just be a part of Sacramento's vibe. We really want to be known as a Sacramento cannabis company. It's where we're from. It's where we operate. So we really try to focus on doing as much as we can in this local area. So we sponsor a reggae show at Swabbies on the River every third Friday. You'll see us at Denials, which is like a swap meet market down in Roseville. We do Sunday nights at this Torch Jazz Club where we kind of sponsor that and bring people in there. So just little things like that. They're not huge, but I think it's kind of an unmeasurable effect. And I think it's just good to do as much as we can. And we enjoy doing that. I enjoy doing that. I enjoy setting up events and meeting people and just kind of getting our feelers out there.
Right. I say it all the time. You don't need to be national famous, right? You don't need the Super Bowl commercial. Well, it might help, but I don't know how many small businesses, cannabis-based businesses, have enough, to spend on a Super Bowl commercial. The $1 million or whatever it is for the 30-second, 15-second ad spot. But it's really about getting locally famous. And I would say I'm very similar to you, where I'm a data guy, right? I like looking at the numbers. I like seeing attribution. I like being able to track that. If I put my money in here, I'm getting a return on, my ad spend and stuff like that. But now when it comes to the branding play, the local community play, it's a little bit more tricky, right? It's how do you now associate yourself with brands and local businesses that reflect positively on your business? So then when they do see you, they end up making a purchase, right? Did you sponsor local events and see an immediate return? Did you have a little bit of patience because you knew it was going to pan out? What was your thought process on bridging the gap from digital, high attribution, being able to track conversions and stuff like that, to your local events where it's maybe this worked?
Yeah, it's still kind of that, maybe this will work. But to be honest, the events for me aren't really, I don't think there is really a measurable effect, or at least I'm not trying to measure it. For me, it's more, let's just show face. Let's show as many people who want to come and talk to us who we are, what we're about, and just to put a real face behind it, right? Because we don't have a walk-in, so people can't come in and meet the team and talk to them. They talk to them on the phone. They see the drivers, of course, but I think we've had a good response from the community when we are out there, because folks will come up and say, hey, there's NorCal, we order from you guys, great to meet you. And it's really fun and rewarding to do that because we see that there's an impact on the community and we see that it's positive, and it just makes us want to do more of that. So I don't think there's a measurable effect other than the goodwill that I feel like it brings,
That makes sense. So what would you say your current biggest challenges and struggles in running the delivery?
280E all day long. Yeah, that needs to change. It's just unfair the way that we're being taxed at the federal level. It's illegal, but 38 states or somewhere around there, or at least have medical and or recreational. It's well past the point of the majority that cannabis should be legal in the US. And the way it's being taxed is just unfair. So I know they are working on potentially rescheduling it. I don't necessarily think that's the right move, but I'm not really an expert on the topic, but from my perspective, it seems like it should just be decriminalized, declassified, descheduled, and made legal, but also regulated to a certain degree. I mean, alcohol is regulated, tobacco is regulated, but it's also everywhere,
Right.
So I think the hardest thing is just the tax burden that, we work so hard to make money and make a profit. But I can tell you from experience, after 8 years, it's still a break-even game, more or less.
So how are you, trying to deal as best as you possibly can with some of the taxation, increased competition, shrinking profit margins, if there's one thing that I've learned from, these 30 plus interviews now, it's like, this is the big thing. This is like the main thing, right? So what are you doing on your side to, at least, reduce this blow as best as possible?
So what we did was about 2 years ago, we realized that we needed to get vertically integrated. We couldn't just be relying on suppliers to supply us products at a 50% margin and make money. We couldn't do that. So we realized that we needed to make our own brand and white label it. And so we had an opportunity to get a second license, and we're actually right here in the same building. It's a suite next door to our delivery license. So we got distro manufacturing, which has allowed us to source our own products, package our own products, and white label it for the NorCal Holistics menu. And that has done extremely well for us in the last 2 years. We've worked it up to where now our brand NorCal Holistics is about 25% of our revenue. And we have obviously a better margin on that because we manufacture that product, we source it, we manufacture it, we package it. So we have really competitive pricing on our products, and they're also really good quality products. But we've also worked in a better margin on that. And what it's done is just increase our overall gross margin by about 2 or 3%, give or take.
Nice.
And that 2 or 3% is life and death in this industry. I mean, if you're right at 50% margin and you're doing promos and things like that, you're realistically going to be probably closer to 47 or 48. And that 3% is life and death when it comes to the end of the year. You got to pay your taxes. Do you have the money to do it or not? It's tricky for sure.
Right. So, one of the other major things aside from taxation is just the growing number of dispensaries popping up. I mean, before this call, we were talking about all these dispensaries in Toronto. You hear about Oklahoma, California, Denver, you name it. There's just a lot of stores popping up, right? So, another conversation that I've been having is that it kind of hits delivery pretty hard, because if there is a store like literally right beside where you're living, and it's easier to just go pop in, pop out and get what you want, sometimes that actually might be the least friction route, despite you actually getting delivery right to your door, right? So, I guess my question to you is like, how are you dealing with the competition in the space, and do you wish you had a physical store and then all the problems that come along with that? Or do you like being lean and still being delivery, but not having the advantage of having that physical location?
It's that's a great question, and there's a couple different ways I could go at it, but I would say that in the beginning, my goal was to have a walk-in dispensary, but that was unavailable. And so delivery license was a lower threshold. And you didn't, there was only 30 licenses here in SAC, maybe it was 20 at the time. And those were they had already been bought. So 20 dispensaries operating. So unless you were going to find someone who's going to sell one, or you were going to wait for the city to allow more licenses, delivery was the only option. But as time has developed, and especially through COVID, because of that big influx in business that we got, because everybody was at home and ordering delivery, the tides have kind of changed, at least from my perspective and in this location anyways. We have a lot of customers that call us and tell us that they would rather get it delivered than walk 5 minutes away and wait in line at the dispensary and do that. They like the comfort of just staying at their house and getting it delivered. So I think in a way that, kind of businesses like Amazon have done really well with delivery and, fast delivery, same day delivery, 2-hour delivery. I think a lot of folks are really accustomed to that and comfortable with it. And especially after COVID, it's kind of gravitated towards, my thinking has changed where I really think we're in a great spot to be a delivery. because our service area is really exponential. We can keep going as far as we can send a delivery driver. So our reach can be a little bit further, and the more concentrated that we get our customer base, the better and more saturated it is. So I think it's honestly a matter of opinion. I think probably walk-in dispensaries could potentially do a lot more revenue, a lot higher numbers. And it's arguable whether their expenses are actually any lower. And I guess it depends on the city that they're in, the building that they're in. Do they own the building? Are they leasing the building? Delivery has a lot of overhead. And the way I've always looked at it is we essentially have the same overhead as a walk-in dispensary, except we also have to pay our delivery drivers to go and deliver the product to the customers. And so in my mind, I've always kind of looked at it like, we have a higher overhead. But I've never owned a dispensary, so I don't know some of the other costs that probably factor into that, and I could be incorrect. But that's just my view on it. Is it seems like we're essentially doing the same thing but delivering it. So we do charge a $5 delivery fee, which we always have, and that pretty much makes up for that. But I would say if the opportunity presented itself to have a walk-in dispensary, I think I would still jump on it, just because that's always been a dream of mine, to have a store, that I can set up, and we're right there in the community. We can, events and things there. I don't know, it seems like it would be a lot of fun, but who knows?
Who knows what the future will hold? Yeah, I mean, we have, I've spoken to a bunch of people where they, where the city/state, whatever governing body allows at this point, where they're opening up, like consumption lounges. So I know like Vegas, they're the forefront of doing all these, crazy things because it's international tourism and everyone goes there. Consumption lounges are a really big thing. Some people also use their central location as like you say, like an event space, right? So come here, you can use the space as an event. And again, it really depends on how big / how small of a space that you want as well, right? Because you can get a really big space, and then that goes into, do you own the place? Are you leasing the space? What's your location? And I think you're right being patient, because from the people that I've spoken to, like out of all the decisions that you can make, and that's going to make the biggest compounding effect in like the success of your business, it is your location, right? Because you can't just pick up and go like, SEO, you can build a page on your website, then just build another page, and you have kind of like digital real estate, right? And that's all the SEO game is finding the best digital real estate and making sure that you rank for those places, and then you're good to go, right? But a lot of times with the other owners that I've spoken to, where there was this massive, like, let's say, stigma, but landlords just didn't want to rent out to dispensaries, right? Like they just didn't want to, especially at the beginning. So they would be charging a 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever X premium on that space, because you needed to get a space before you applied for the license, and then you're paying all that money ahead of time, right? And they didn't really have any options, so this is what they wanted to do. And now kind of like fast forward to the 5-year lease break, this is where, this is the prediction anyways, where a lot of people are either going to decide, hey, this is where I'm in, this is where I'm out. Hey, I made back my money, I broke even. And then now there's going to be this slight correction. So essentially that's what the market's, what they're saying about the market. So maybe there in the next, couple of years, there might be a space for you to snatch up. That's, a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Who knows what the future holds? I'm optimistic about it though. Yeah, to answer the other part of your question, actually, now that I've had a second to think about it, the competition, at least in Sacramento, it's very competitive here. And from what I've heard, it's probably one of the most competitive areas compared to, the Bay Area and compared to LA. I only have experience here though, but it's competitive, yes, but at the same time, in the last few months or even the last year, we've started to see some companies drop off the map. So that's kind of been a sign that, some people are exiting the industry, or going to a different area of the industry, or potentially going back to the traditional market, which I wouldn't blame them for. So in a way, I think we just by being here a long time and staying strong, we're starting to do pretty well.
Right.
I'm optimistic.
You're weathering the storm, walking through the fire, and coming out the other side alive.
That's the plan.
So where do you see the future of the cannabis industry heading?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, after 8 years,
I know, and I think that's the right answer, because if anybody says I know for sure what's going on, that's when you raise your eyes and you're like, hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I have no idea, because it changes every year. I think, oh, okay, I think it might go in this direction. I mean, I thought it was going to be federally legalized like 4 years ago. I mean, we all thought, okay, California's on board, Colorado's been on board for a few years, Washington's been on board. That's it. All the big states, we got to get New York on maybe, and then it'll get federally legalized, and everything's going to be gravy, and we're going to get acquired for, $10 million, and I'm going to go, right off from the sunset. But that's not happened, and I'm not holding my breath for that to happen. And to be honest, I love running, this business. I love the industry. I love the people that I'm surrounded with, and I think I'm going to keep doing it for a long time. So I'm optimistic, but I think descheduling or reclassifying, something needs to happen there. I know there's some talk about rescheduling it to Schedule 3. I'm not really sure what that's going to mean. I've heard some interesting perspectives that would mean that it's going to be all through pharmaceutical companies, that you would have to have a license to the DEA. I don't know how that would work with the current structure. That doesn't really make sense if they've given out all these licenses, to companies within the state. How are they then going to pull it back and make it something that's only through prescription and pharmacies? But I don't fully understand that whole legal side of it. It's not my expertise, but I think it needs to be changed sooner rather than later. Otherwise, the fate of the industry is just going to get worse.
Right. You strike me as a guy that who only worries about what he can control, and then the things that he can't control them anyway, so why even really bother wasting bandwidth on it?
Wow, I'm giving off that impression. That's great. I guess that is true to a certain degree if I'm giving off that impression, but I feel like I'm constantly putting out fires, and I'm constantly worrying about things. I try not to get too caught up into it, but I have so much to do on a day-to-day basis to make sure that these lights are still on, and that products coming in, products going out, employees are happy, customers are happy, I'm happy, all those things. I don't really have time to worry about those things. So I guess to answer your question, you're right. I don't have time to worry about it, so why worry about it?
Yeah.
But I won't say that I don't lose sleep about things in this industry on a regular basis. It keeps me up.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's exactly it, right? There's a lot of people that would, go on the internet and start typing out a bunch of comments on why, this shouldn't be this way or why this should be this way, right? But like ultimately, it's like, you have to do what's in front of you at the end of the day, right? Yep. Just kind of based on your answers and things like that, you're like, yeah, let's get these classifications sorted out. But like at the end of the day, I have a business to run, right? I've bills to pay for, vendors to deal with, staff to make sure that they're happy, making sure there's a roof over my head, so on and so forth. And whatever comes in the future, again, I would say I'm optimistic as well. My other guest said she was pragmatically optimistic, which I thought was a really good one. And it's like, yeah, I think if you kind of zoom out from a macro, things, they're moving in the positive direction. They're just moving in a lot slower of a step than I think we would all like, right? Like, so yeah. States are legalizing, states aren't blowing up, the population isn't doing anything crazy now that everyone can, like all of these foundational things, like, they're okay, right? Like, the world hasn't blown up now that legalization has mostly happened, right? Now we have the New Jerseys, the New Yorks, we have the states now figuring out their license structure and making sure that, there's, in Oklahoma, that, there's a proper amount of dispensaries out there. Honestly, probably the next big one is Texas, right? Like that will be a very, very interesting one, just with everything that they have going on. But even there, it's like, CBD, hemp, THCA. So bit by bit, is it happening as fast as we all want to? Probably not, but I think eventually it will happen. But yeah, so
it's got to, man.
Exactly. I mean, exactly, it has to. So what advice would you give to yourself if you were to start all over again?
Yeah, I thought about this. To be completely honest with you, I think I would tell myself to go in a different industry, which it's hard for me to say because I do really love this industry and I love what I do, and I love coming into work every day. I really, really do. As stressful as it can be. But I would probably tell myself to put all of my energy and effort, the same amount of it, just into a different industry. Because I didn't really know where this was going to go. I didn't really have a plan. I didn't really have numbers in mind as to, how much I want to make, this and that. It was just, I want to do something for myself. I want to work for myself, and see what I can make. And I think if I'd applied in another industry, I would like to think that I would have been successful. But you never know. Maybe this was just the sweet spot that worked out. So.
Right. So to play a little bit of devil's advocate, to bring it back to the beginning where you posted a post on weedmaps, found your products, and then kind of sold it. I think there's very few industries where you can just find a platform that would allow you to sell at such a profit to almost allow you, or even make you say, hey, maybe I can make money doing this, right? And that obviously snowballed into you getting drivers and more drivers and building up the company to what it is right now, right?
100%, yeah.
Do you think that if you didn't have that early proof to yourself, right? Because this is like, I'm an early entrepreneur, right? I did a few things, but it's my first kind of like big thing where I'm making money and doing those sorts of things. And you have this imposter syndrome, but you don't have the proof that you are good enough to get the result that you're looking for, despite how entrepreneurial you think you are, when you want to get started, right? So do you think that, you're the type of person that would have just made any business work should you have just put your mind to it? Or do you think those early wins really contributed to you to really, quitting your part-time job, hiring people, and because you had the proof of concept already?
I think that's a great point. I would like to think that I would have been successful in another industry, but there wasn't a blueprint for this. And you're right. It was a lower threshold. I started before licensure, which was intentional. I wanted to kind of build a customer base and actually see if this was worth it before it got legalized, before I was going to jump fully into it. And you're right. It was a lower entry to get in, and the profit in the beginning was good. You were able less competition. Taxes, it's interesting. I was such a Boy Scout when I started. I filed, corporation paperwork, filed with a CDTFA, all the stuff that I was supposed to do as a business owner, as a new business owner, right? And I thought that, well, this is going to make the city or the state look back at me when it's time for me to go apply for my license. And they're going, wow, this guy's been paying his taxes since 2016. He's reported all of his revenue. He's got tax returns. We'll give this guy a license. No, that's not how that worked out. I got a license, but it wasn't because of that.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's just interesting to think about. But I think you're right. There was a lot easier to multiply money in the beginning when it was just spend money on weedmaps, buy a product, and there was a much higher markup on product. 3-4x markup was pretty standard. It was kind of like manufacturers, manufacture something, whole big margin of work.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, look, you put $1 in, you get 10 out, you get 5 out, whatever it is. It's a pretty good incentive to keep on going, putting in those hours because it's pretty good. So to quickly end off, we have this last little segment where we ask the previous guest a question they have for the next guest, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask the next guest a question as well. Okay. So this is from Aram Stoney from Big Sur Botanicals. He's just cool. You got off easy on this one. What's your favorite cannabis category and why?
I'm old school. I would have to say flower. It's what everything is made from. It's a beautiful plant. It's fun to grow. It's fun to smoke.
And next question for the guest.
What made you get into the cannabis industry? Because I feel like there's so many different reasons why people have done that. And I think the easy, obvious answer is, well, I like weed and I wanted to sell weed, or I like weed, so I wanted to be in the industry. And maybe that's the case for a lot of people. And I guess to a certain degree, that might be why I'm in the industry. But I really think the reason I'm in the industry is because it was an opportunity that fell into my lap. I saw somebody else that was doing it, and I said, I want to try that. So
Awesome. So lastly, where can people find you / the store if they want to get in touch?
For sure. Yeah, you can find us on Instagram. It's at NorCal_holistic. You can also find our brand Moss Cannabis Co. at Moss Cannabis Co. on Instagram. Other than that, you can reach me by email, Seth@NorCalHolistics.org. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
Fantastic. All right, Seth, thank you so much for hopping on the Dispensary Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Kwan, and until next time, I will catch you guys later. See you.
Awesome. See ya. Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Dispensary Marketing Podcast. My name is Brandon Kwan, and I'm the founder of Cannabud Marketing, the #1 marketing agency of choice for dispensaries, both in the United States and in Canada. If you ever want to get in touch with me about any marketing strategies, tips, and tricks, I can definitely help you. Just go visit our website at cannabudmarketing.com. That's CANNABUD marketing.com, or just check the links in the description below. Until next time, talk to you later. Bye.